for one, I can't stand trying to pitch people that are walking by a conference booth to buy my product. Like, I think that's just such a weird way to go about things. I want people to want to be part of Atmos Tree. I did this pipe ceremony one time with these indigenous people, and I was given a spirit animal and spirit name, and it was my spirit animal is like the hawk, right? And it's like the all-seeing, can see like bird's eye view of everything and how just stuff works, where things are going to go.
What it is it's carving out your own niche where one doesn't exist. You're a red boat in a big blue ocean. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. We have a special guest for you today, a returning guest. It's been 3 years since he's been on the show. Kurt, welcome back to the Blue is the New White podcast, my friend.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, man. I'm glad we got a chance to kind of catch up a little bit before the show. It just built my excitement for some of the conversation we get to have today and some of the value that I think we can add to our listeners and to our viewers. So I'm just going to start off first by saying, if you haven't listened to Kurt's episode, or if it's been a while, it was 3 years ago this month. I believe it was episode 111. You can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening or watching this. But definitely check that out. It was a great conversation. He's an arborist by trade, and that's a lot of what we talked about in the last episode, revolving around the blue-collar skilled trades and all that kind of stuff. But I'm more curious now today, Kurt, what have you been up to for the last 3 years? Where you been, man?
Dude, I don't even know if I can. Oh man, it is so different, because back then, yeah, great episode. I was probably at a point where I was just running my own tree company. That's cool. You said it was episode 111 as well.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a little bit. I dabble in the woo woo here and there. It's probably ties in with some high level entrepreneurial people. So that's really cool that you said that, because I'm just like, whoa,
Love it.
Anyway, whatever. But so I was owning my own tree company called Cochrane Tree Care back then, and it's traditional tree company, right? We got a little chipper. Well, we just got that this year, but basically hauling away debris on a trailer, pruning, removing trees, just in our small community here. I didn't want to commute. I think at that time I was really focusing on my mental health and being available for my family, like a lot of work-life balance, but more so on the life and the self-care side.
Sure. Just
because I had a long-standing career before that as a firefighter EMT, and I was diagnosed with, PTSD and all the whatever labels the society wants to put on you. And I needed to find a way to kind of overcome that, find my path, and ultimately decided that working for myself was going to be that answer. And kind of just trying to figure out what my life purpose was, I think, at that point. And for some reason, I was really drawn into trees and working with nature, being outside, being able to set my own schedule, all those kinds of things. And working with a team again, which has been great, because in this last little while, we've been able to hire a few people. So it's kind of nice feeling like you're giving employment to other people. And I hear good feedback that they're really loving their job. And that's really fulfilling, that I found out. And so I guess you'd say over the last 3 years with my local tree company specifically, it's been just slowly growing in terms of a little bit more equipment, a little bit more business, and then training new people.
That's awesome. Well, what else? You had mentioned something about Atmos Tree, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, dude. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm an ideas guy, right? Like the classic kind of entrepreneurial brain that's just like scattered everywhere. And basically I hit the ceiling with Cochrane Tree Care, or mentally I did, where I was like, I can't get anything more really out of Cochrane Tree Care, or so I thought at that time. I've maxed out for what I want it to do. So what can I do now to kind of give back to the industry? I started taking some courses on how to be a trainer through the place. It's called Arboriculture Canada. I took a bunch of courses through them to get skilled myself, and then realized I was just falling in love with this industry. So maybe I could start to give back and start training other people. So I went and got my certification through them to be a trainer. And from there, I'll go back to what I was thinking about. I was starting to lose track a bit. But basically, I hit the ceiling with Cochrane Tree Care, and I needed more purpose like in life. I needed a place for all of these ideas to go and a way to expand. So I asked the universe one night, like literally, I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to trust in the fact that I'm going to get an idea from somewhere if I ask for it. So I literally asked for an idea. I'm like, what do I want? Where do I want to be? And I swear to God, it was like that night or the next night. It was like Neo in the Matrix, like right in the back of the neck.
Amazing.
With this whole business plan for Atmos Tree. So I stayed up all night and I was writing it all down. I thought it was the greatest idea in the world. But basically what Atmos Tree is it's an alliance for arborists to join a green solution, essentially, for arborists to positively offset their tree removals 2-to-1 through off-site plantations. So we charge recycling fees. Like you can voluntarily join the alliance. It's not some sort of regulated thing. And you can associate and affiliate with us. And we give you all the marketing and the branding material to have this green affiliation. It's like this tribe of education and communication between arborists. And we all instill these $25 fees in Canada, $20 in the US, to clients when they remove a tree, which is nothing because tree removals are like, can be thousands of dollars, right?
Right.
And most people are like, oh, this is great. I'm glad I chose an arborist that's actually planting or has a bit of a green solution to their business compared to one that doesn't. So it makes them look good, boosts their business. The client feels better. And oftentimes there's actually some guilt around removing trees because it's the bread and butter of a lot of arborists companies removing trees. And there's probably a lack of understanding and training around other things that could be done that may earn a little bit less money up front, but longer term it would, as far as tree preservation, that sort of thing. So we're trying to change the mindsets of arborists as well and give them the education and the tools to be better arborists, be more environmentally conscious, and be able to offer these solutions to their clients, maybe on subscription-based services as far as like plant healthcare programs, cabling trees, proper pruning, all that kind of stuff. So we're releasing like newsletters, and we're going to be developing. I shouldn't even be speaking about it yet because it's not done yet.
No, it's all right.
I want to be developing online courses and certifications for arborists that exist that are not your standard paradigm of like, here's how to safely use a chainsaw. Here's how to cut the tree down, right? Because that's where everything is. Right. So I was like, I got to create Atmos Tree, build this alliance. And within the very first year, we've been around for about 1 year now. We have over 40 alliance members, so 40 companies. We just signed on our first sort of big company, Green Drop Tree Care. They have over 50 employees, and they align with this regenerative vision that I have. Everyone that's joined has. They usually come across it and they're like, whoa, this is the best idea ever. Or I've had a similar idea in the past, but didn't know how to execute it, what to do. So I know there is a need for it, and it's a brand new idea in the space. There's nothing like it other than a few municipal bylaws in certain areas around the world where you have to replant, but it's usually on your own property or an offsite thing with deposits and that kind of thing. So Atmos Tree kind of solved a whole bunch of problems for dealing with all these ideas that I have in my brain.
I was going to say, it scratched that itch, did it?
Yeah, it totally does. So like on a selfish way, it's like, it allows me to be unlimited now with my growth and scale and ideas, and keeps me involved in the same industry. And now I'm giving back. I feel passionate and good about the fact that I'm able to offer some education and do something better. Like Atmos Tree is meant to be a win-win-win, like for everyone. Anyone who's involved with Atmos Tree is going to be winning and not losing. Like, you know, I love it. To me, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
I have this vision of where it's going to go, and it's just, I'm like, let's go now, let's go, come on.
No, you know what? I love that, and I got that, impression that the first time that we spoke, you know, because I could, you know, during that conversation, and I'm starting to recall it now that we're talking, right? And I remember just almost being able to see your thoughts, you know, because you just have this way of like, I don't know. You can tell your brain is always working. So something like this it's incredible for a couple of reasons. Because I think what I'm impressed by is Atmos Tree is an unlimited extension to your current zone of genius, which I want to say is overlooked and undervalued. A lot of times, what we find today in with people who want to be entrepreneurs or just idea people, right? Is that they learn a skill, they do a skill, they say, oh, it's not working, and then they move on to do something else, right? And then they do something else, and then they do something else, and then they do something else, instead of building on what they already know. So I think that it's an incredible route that you took, and it's something that that aligns clearly with your values, right? I can see the passion just spilling out of you while you're talking about it, which is incredible. So first off, hats off to you. Second,
Thanks,
we're gonna talk a little bit more about that and kind of dig in a little bit to some of the struggles, some of the lessons, some of the stuff that you've learned over the last 3 years.
Sure.
Before we do, I want to ask you a question, and it's a question I ask all my guests now. But Kurt, I'm wondering, what would you consider your superpower?
Yeah, I think we already know what I think my superpower is, and it's not just idea generation, but I think that idea generation comes from this ability to see how things work, see how systems work together, be able to flip into other people's perspectives, even at least partially, to understand how people think. So when I'm looking at, say, my website, I'm not like looking at it and being distracted by like, ooh, that's a cool color. Ooh, I like that button over there. It's more like, what is somebody else thinking when they've seen this for the fresh eyes for the first time? What's capturing their attention? What do they need to see? Like, so I can try to flip my brain into that blank space. Sometimes that is getting more and more difficult because you do get this baseline of like knowledge and understanding that you have to try and remove. But yeah, I mean, it ties in with, I did this pipe ceremony one time with these indigenous people, and I was given a spirit animal and spirit name, and it was, my spirit animal is like the hawk, right? And it's like the all-seeing, can see like bird's eye view of everything and how just stuff works, where things are going to go, how it pieces together. So this gives me the ability, I think, to come up with a lot of ideas, because when I see a problem, like you mentioned, where you come up against like these mistakes or hurdles or whatever, it's like that's just instead of moving on to something else, that's just an opportunity for something to solve.
Yeah.
Right? Like if there's a problem for me, there's probably a problem for somebody else. And then all of a sudden my ideas are just going like, well, how could we solve this? How can we prevent this from happening in the future for myself or for other people? And then it's like, okay, this is a greater problem where like now there's an opportunity to create a business out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or some sort of idea,
I love that. I think that that's great. And that's a really good expansion on idea generation, right? Being able to see how systems work together. It reminds me as you're talking, almost like, you're able to find synergies, right? You're able to align frequencies with what you're working on and what you see as possibilities, which is a gift and a superpower and a special talent. So that is great. And I think that's got entrepreneur written all over it, my friend. So will resonate heavily with the listeners of this podcast for sure. So kind of before we start to unpack that, give me 1 second here. Just messed up my mic. There we go. Before we start to unpack that, I got one question for you, and then we'll kind of dig into the meat and potatoes. But imagine you are one of the listeners of this podcast, right, or viewers of this podcast. What is it that you hope to take away after hearing this discussion?
I hope to inspire people and give them some hope in the fact that you don't necessarily have to be a born ready entrepreneur to do a lot of these things. You can strategically train yourself into a bit of a mindset to allow you to be more creative and generate ideas and see solutions or have a positive outlook on problems or things when they come along. It can be trained, I do believe. I do believe some people have more strength in those areas than others, but it's not like because you don't already think like this when you're listening to this, doesn't mean you can't get there. You mentioned earlier about building upon things, and that's exactly when I look back in hindsight, which is also one of the great tools that you can do. Look back on your day, look back on your last year, analyze it, actually write some stuff down. is that you can build upon all of your life experiences as you go along, as opposed to just scattering all over the place and just moving on to the next thing.
That's all.
I hope that answers the question for you. But
it does. It really does. And I think that's really great, because I think it's easy for people to get discouraged. They see the Elon Musks of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world, and they're like, well, those people were just born to be entrepreneurs, and I don't know that I can do it to that capacity. But what you're stating here is that you don't need to be born into entrepreneurship. You don't need to have that mindset right away before you can walk. It can be a learned behavior if you go about it with intent, one step at a time, which I'm venturing to guess is kind of how you came about in the entrepreneurial world, especially coming from firefighter EMT, right? And then taking this leap into arborism. So, I think that's great. So let's look back a little bit and maybe draw some lessons from your recent experience in building, now what can be considered multiple businesses. Congratulations, you're a serial entrepreneur. So,
always wanted to be one.
So I'm curious first about the local tree company, right? This is more of a traditional business, bringing on employees, and you said you were trying to grow that business. You've been trying to grow that business over the last 3 years. So can you give us some of your experience and maybe some advice on, like, let's say when you started bringing on employees, what's something that you learned about bringing on employees that you didn't know before, but now is going to better help you run your business in the future?
Right. So bringing on employees is a whole nother ballgame, I guess you could say, because up until that point, being a serial entrepreneur, started a little photography business. I mean, we started a little microgreens local business, and those are all of like the little experience driven things that I had in my back pocket for when I eventually came up with the idea for Atmos Tree, right? Like I'd already done a few things, but when you start bringing employees in, because you realize you can't do everything yourself at some point. If you want something to grow, you need to have a team. And just learning that, like I didn't know that right away. I'm still learning that. I am not an expert in managing people yet, but of course I've taken it on as one of my passions to learn those things. So I'm reading books and I'm taking recommendations of books and podcasts and different things from other people, and trying to find the ones that resonate with me for some of the challenges that I'm facing. Some of those challenges are not necessarily finding the right people, because I think there are people that are, kind of pre-skilled, and that's great. But ultimately, I think the right people are people that are able to learn. But then again, people all learn different ways. So this is also a problem.
Yeah.
You have to find out how each individual learns and what resonates with them when you tell them something, right? And how many times you have to tell them something, and all these just different things. So, I mean, I've learned so many things already, but I am definitely challenged by it every day.
That's awesome. Let's stop there for a second, because you said something I think that is really, really important, and I think will resonate with our audience, because you're on the right track. You're on the absolute right track with who the right people are, right? Not necessarily the ones that have the skill out the gate, but the ones that have the ability to learn. And yes, everybody learns differently. We've got that whole pyramid of learning, hands-on and reading and visual and all this kind of stuff, right? But there is a big difference between people who are willing and able to learn quickly and those who are not. And those who are not are typically, they try, maybe it doesn't resonate, they become disengaged, costs a lot of money to bring on an employee. They leave, you bring somebody else in, time and money, right? Exactly. So I think that there's something really, really key in what you honed in on, which was finding people who have the ability to learn, because you could have honed in on 100 different qualities. I mean, there are so many different ways, Kurt, to answer that question, but I think that what you put on under the microscope here is really, really good, and I hope my audience is paying attention to that. There's a lot to be said about bringing on people who are good learners?
Yeah, it's a bit of an attitude as well. They have to be open-minded to what you want them to learn to a degree. Of course, you want people to be independent thinkers. So, of course, ultimately being a business owner or like a leader in the field, I want to be able to give direction of like, they know how to safely use the tools that we have on the job. They know what needs to be done. In this case, removal of a tree from behind a building. And I want them to be able to figure out a plan on their own. Like I want to employ people to be able to be independent thinkers, right?
Yeah.
I don't want them to be in this trap of me micromanaging and telling them every little aspect of their job, how they're going to make those cuts, what rope to use, everything, because you're also training them to think that way when you start doing that. And then all of a sudden you're required to be there to do that for them.
Yeah.
What I try and do is bring on people that align with the vision of our job. So they have to align with the vision of Cochrane Tree Care and the fact that we want to connect with our local community and the homeowners. We ultimately want to make them happy. We want to be advocates for the trees because no one else is advocate for the trees. So we're their last line of defense. We want to be able to educate the clients so they need to understand how trees grow and what makes a healthy tree versus an unhealthy tree. So we're offering proper advice and they trust us. These are all values that have nothing really to do with being an arborist, because you can go to school and train how to do these skills on your own, or anybody can, and I can train them to do that. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Honestly, I want them to have the right mindset so that when I'm not there, I can trust them to be treating our clients appropriately. I can trust them to make decisions and to know how to ask for help from someone else, or to know when they're in a dangerous situation and not be afraid to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things. And I feel like if you can get someone to align with your vision and they feel inspired and they know that what they're doing is for a reason, then they're happy to work for that reason. It's not like you have to go back and give somebody an increase in wage every 6 months and they're like, yes, I made $1 an hour more, I'm worth it, or I'm going to work harder because I just earned more money. Like, think about the things we were talking about this earlier of how you reflect on your past or your past day. Like, just go back and reflect on what things make you happy. Like, what are your values? Chances are they align with a lot of other people's values. We already kind of discussed, like, everyone wants to be happy, feel validated for the things they're doing, all that kind of stuff. So if you feed that to your employees, they're going to perform better, right? It's not just the money. It's the fact that maybe you give them a sweater with their name on it. They feel valued, part of the team, right? You ask them for their opinion when you're making up a strategy on removing the tree. Maybe you know exactly how you're going to do it already, but they also want to be striving towards learning more and getting better. And if you can acknowledge that and give them those milestones to achieve, or acknowledge when they have hit some of those milestones and build an authentic relationship with them, right? I think that's really important. And I know there's a lot of stuff out in the business world out there about like, oh, it's just business. You know what I mean? Like, as if emotion doesn't play into it. That's complete baloney to me. Like, proper good business is all emotion. Think about it, how you're trying to draw in clients to capture new leads to give you business. If they have an emotional connection to you, then they remember you, they remember your brand, they remember your services, they give you word of mouth business, they're going to call you back, like all of these things, right? And same with your employees. If your employees feel valued and you're emotionally connected to them, they're going to perform better. Like, if I can offer one more example on that.
Please.
We would get sometimes caught up in this whole rat race of production and going out there working hard. And at the end of the day, we're just going home and we're exhausted and throwing away wet ropes and that kind of stuff. And then you start to see the team sort of disintegrate and pull away from each other. And they're all lost in their own heads with their muffs on and they're stressed about this and that, thinking about other things. And like every now and then it makes sense. You got to stop and take them for, this team building or whatever you want to call it. But literally go for a beer with them and sit down and talk and get that connection back. And all of a sudden that feeling of all these stories that you're building up in your head of, this guy's not working hard enough. This guy didn't listen to what I had to say to him earlier. He keeps making mistakes, and just focusing on all of these problems that everyone's making. Like, you need to think about the positive things that they are doing and then reinforce those things. And maybe you do that over beer, and then you bring them up and you build them up and you support them to do their jobs more efficiently. And then you have that connection. And then that selfishly gets rid of all of the stressors and story crap in my mind that's going on.
Yeah.
I trust them again.
There you go. There you go. I was waiting for you to use that word, man. So I wanna pause here, and I want to kind of point out some of the things that you said, or rather some of the things that I've heard, right? And because I think it is wildly valuable, right? Business is all emotion, right? And it's that way because we're human, right? And to build connection with other humans builds trust. So coincidentally, I had an episode, yesterday that I did with Joel Worthington. He owns the franchise, or he's president of the franchise, Mr. Electric, out here with like 250 locations. You know, so many employees. I can't even, I don't even remember what he said. But I'm looking for my notes here with what he said. Yeah, here it was. He said that for people to believe in your business, they have to believe in you first as the leader, right? And this, I think, is exactly what you're speaking to: building connection, right? Team building, acknowledging that people have emotions, and that it's not all business. They still have to, do what they have to do during the day to provide for their families. And, we all have our own struggles and things that, we're playing in our mind and all this kind of stuff, and it's so important to build that relatability and to get your team to believe in you as a person and understand why it is that they're following you in this before they can adopt your vision of the business. So really, really well stated there. And I don't know if you understand how good of advice you just gave to the audience. Like,
I hope so. I hope I can give something back. Yeah.
Yeah. You're super humble, man, but this is incredible stuff. And I think that it's important to note because a lot of people miss it. So really good there. Let's shift a little bit away from the traditional business. Let's talk a little bit about Atmos Tree, right? Because this is a brainchild of yours that has, as you say, unlimited potential. I think it's an incredible idea. We call this a blue ocean strategy, right? You read that book?
No.
Okay. It's great. It's a great book. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. And essentially what it is it's carving out your own niche where one doesn't exist. You're a red boat in a big blue ocean, right? Yeah. And that's essentially what you've done. And so I'm curious, there's obviously differences between that traditional business and Atmos,
Big time.
Yeah. And I wonder if you can talk about some of those differences. Maybe we can narrow that down to something that you've noticed recently, so it's easy to speak on, because this is a really big question. So,
sure.
So what kind of differences have you noticed recently in what area of that business, that you might be able to speak on?
Yeah, well, we can keep that sort of in theme because there is a lot of similarities as far as being a leader, having people trust in you, to see your vision, all of that kind of stuff. Like that's like the root,
Sure.
The root problem, the root of the tree, essentially. But on the top, when we're dealing with branches and leaves and these external end result things, we can take employees as an example again, because we were already discussing them. But having employees in person and doing a skill is a lot different than having employees part of Atmos Tree. So I have employees working by the hour under my thumb at Cochrane Tree Care. And then with Atmos Tree, I had to develop a relationship with someone that happens somewhat organically online, just like we're doing now. And they had some business advice and experience, and they kind of played the opposite role of me being like more of a visionary, and they were more of an integrator. It felt really good. I followed my gut on that a lot. But the problems I'm facing there, I guess, is just distance. Like she has a bunch of connections in a team already that she was able to bring in, which is amazing. There is so much value and benefit from having her. I'm very, very lucky. And we can talk about how I kind of fell into those things too on a woo-woo level if you want. But some of the challenges there are, I don't see them face to face. So it's difficult to build that connection like you would if you did know someone in person. There is still something slightly missing there. letting go and having trust in people to do things and take over parts of your business that you have very little experience in, like a lot of tech, some SEO stuff on the backside of websites, gathering analytics, hooking up all of these different online software functions to connect and communicate with each other. That kind of stuff is like overwhelming for me, right? Like I may have a lot of strengths in my brain as like this quote visionary with gathering ideas and seeing how things work. But like if it comes down to the details of a lot of this grindy stuff that needs to get done to present itself in the way that so I can take these ideas and show them to the general public, I need to let people do that for me. And I'm just reading this book right now, Buy Back Your Time.
Oh, I love it. Dan Martell, right?
Yeah, it's really good. A local business guy that part of this group that I'm in recommended it to me because we were talking about some of this stuff. But one thing they keep saying is if you can get someone to do something for you at 80% of what you could do it for, that's 100% better than doing it yourself.
Right. That's a great way to put it.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have to it's so hard, man. This thing's my baby. And I'm like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. But like, there's so much there I want to do and I want to see happen. And to me, it makes so much sense. And I want it done like now, right?
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon. You told me that. Like, that's a common entrepreneurial kind of brain mindset. But I have to let that go and trust people that I don't even communicate with, because I have Caitlin, my girl. Sorry, I just said her name. I hope she doesn't mind. But, she's like this team lead person. So then she deals with everyone below her, and I don't see them. And it's
right.
And you know how hard it is not to get to know those people and make sure they're the trust that I have to put out there. And then I just get like bottled up about it, and just, oh my gosh, it's challenging. It's very challenging.
It is, and I want to acknowledge too, I love that you're at this spot in your business and we're having this conversation, because you're in it, you're right there. This isn't something that you advise people on. You're not running $1 million or $100 million organization, and so you're right there in the thick of it. I think you're where a lot of our listenership, our audience is. And so I think that the things that you're saying, they're going to relate really, really well to, and they're going to find a lot of comfort in what it is that you're talking about and how you're handling it too. So a couple of things I want to touch on there. I love what you said about, having somebody to run other people, right? And I think that kind of goes back to, as entrepreneurs, the biggest leverage we have is other people, right? Because our visions and our dreams and our plans are way too big for us to lift by ourselves. And so that's why this conversation and leadership in general, and the things that you're speaking on, that's why it's so important, because we can't leverage other people's time or other people's intelligence until they're bought into us and what we're doing.
Yes.
So I think that's huge. The other thing
I have to keep them inspired. Sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
It's inspired and aligned with the vision, because I don't know if they're working 20 hours a week. Does it matter? I don't know. To me, it matters if there's return on the investment, if I see things happening and changing, as opposed to thinking as an hourly wage thing, because I know that can cause a lot of stress and pain and problems too, right? So you have to give them that freedom, but and you can trust them if they align with that vision, that they're doing it and they're doing it for good reasons, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So there's an employee development, what do you want to call it? I guess analogy is the word that someone told me. I'm not going to take credit for this, but I think this is right up your alley, being, in the arborist space and the tree space. So it's actually, the analogy is a tree, right? And it speaks to problems and who handles the problems and how, right? So someone told me this, is you imagine a tree and you've got the leaves. If you have problems that are equivalent to the leaves, then your frontline employees should be able to handle it no problem. If you have problems equivalent to the branches, it falls to middle management, but a development opportunity for those frontline employees. The trunk is reserved for the executive team to make those decisions, but also another opportunity to develop middle management in the process. And then what you handle as the owner is the root, right? Because that's what makes the tree grow, and that's what, if incurs the most damage, will kill the tree.
I'm
So
feeding that soil. I'm
that's
feeding the
right.
soil, man.
That's right. That's
What makes a tree grow.
you're the expert at this. Like that's where my analogy ends, and you can take over because
I use the tree and for an analogy on so many things.
Is that
Lots
right?
with life, but oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, and you know what? I imagine that the tree can be used as an analogy in many different ways. I'd love to hear some of that sometime too, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. That's awesome. So let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left, and this is one of those conversations I could go Rogan style and have for like 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think that we would capture the listenership for 3 hours because I'm not Joe Rogan. Working on it, but we've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we cover everything that you want to cover and I want to cover. I am looking at your shirt right now. I want to make sure I ask you about your podcast. Right? Is this something that you had 3 years ago, or is this relatively new?
This is new, man. This is all part of the Atmos Tree community and growth, right?
Oh, okay. So this is part of the Atmos thing.
Yeah,
Great.
it is, but it isn't, right? So the Arborist Blueprint Podcast is a way to connect with arborists, boots on the ground arborists and business owners, people looking to better themselves. I do a lot of talk on there around kind of mindset and leadership and things that I'm learning along the way, or talk to other guests that are kind of similar. We do dabble into some personal development kind of things. And as far as arboriculture goes, we talk a lot about, like you said, like the root problem, literally, like we're talking about regenerative practice. So like soil and how to assess trees and insects and damages, and always asking the why. It's all about asking the why behind everything we're doing, as opposed to the traditional paradigm of arboriculture, being shown how to use a tool, how to cut a tree down, asking no other questions, right? This is the problems that I'm trying to solve. So the Arborist Blueprint Podcast allows me to be me, Kurt the arborist, the face, the personality, get out my opinions, listen to other people's opinions, and give back a lot of like free educational, I think it's valuable, content to the community, which inadvertently builds a bit of a tribe that's outside of Instagram too, which I want to diversify my awareness and my presence out there, because if one thing breaks down, then I lose everything too. So I had to tie it all in. And I mean, we talk about Atmos Tree a lot on the podcast here and there, because I often have Alliance members on, or some of the education pieces tie into it. And then I have people following, and then organically they get to learn my personality, who I am, what I stand for, where I'm going with things. And then they naturally want to be part of Atmos Tree, right? I don't want to sell Atmos Tree to people. Like, for one, I can't stand trying to pitch people that are walking by a conference booth to buy my product. Like, I think that's just such a weird way to go about things. I want people to want to be part of Atmos Tree, right? So the ways I'm going to do that is through things like podcasts, releasing informative articles on our blog and our newsletter and that kind of thing, and just building this hub for everyone to be part of, that want to align with a regenerative new way of thinking about how to deal with trees and the way we do business. And on top of that, we're sprinkling in a whole lot of business development. So like my vision for the future with Atmos Tree is we're going to have like a think tank there. We're going to have like a business incubator, an accelerator. We're going to have a regenerative arborist certification, like everything, because we have a lot of people joining too that are new, and they're like, I love this idea. They're more new age, maybe thinking or environmentally conscious, and they've learned the ropes from their tree company they've worked for, and they want to start their own business. So they look at it as a bit of a solution to help them boost their business. So I want to give all of this stuff that I've learned about business as well, because a lot of arborists and a lot of people in trades in general are technicians. They love doing what they do. They love working in the trees.
Yeah.
They love working with the tools. Like, that's their expertise, and they don't want to look after all this other crap, right? And me being an ideas guy and loving to do all this other stuff, I want to support all of them to do their job. And the better they are at doing their job, the more trees they're preserving, the more Alliance members I have that when they do have to cut a tree down, that we're planting more in replacement. Like, it all just works out perfectly, in my opinion.
Well, you're a little biased, right?
Yeah, of course.
No.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I think it's a really great vehicle for that. And I really like what you said about asking why, right? It's you're developing the understanding, because you can teach people what to think all day long, but if you teach them how to think, that is entirely on a different level. So
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
I love that very much. All right, man, we're going to move to close here. And after we're wrapped up, definitely don't hang up right away. Stay on after so we can do a little recap. But I have one more question for you.
For sure.
I love to ask this question, but if you could share one piece of wisdom or advice that has the potential to transform the way a small blue-collar business owner thinks about success or growth or freedom or fulfillment or leadership or any of this stuff, what would that be?
If you're trying to grow and scale your business and you want to get more eyes on it, you need to learn how to let go and trust other people to help you carry out your vision, and realize that your vision of what you think you're trying to build may change, and you're going to have to follow the flow of where it goes, where the demand is, where the other people's minds want to influence it to go. You got to guide them, but you got to work as a team.
I love that. That is a.
I hope I follow my own advice in 3 years when we do our next podcast.
I'm betting you will, man. No, that's really great advice. And here's what I want to point out about that before we completely wrap up is learning to let go and trust others is one thing. Following the flow is another, right? Because we can let go and we can trust others, but sometimes, we forget that the flow is where we can actually find our success. So I have Post-it notes above my desk at work. This is my home studio, but at work I have Post-it notes, and one of them says, learn to surf. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to hop on a surfboard and bust my ass and drown in the ocean, because that's probably what would happen if I took that literally. What it means is that when the wave of adversity, when the wave of challenge comes in and adversity and all of these things, you have two options, right? You can swim against the wave, which you'll never be able to do, right? Or you can hop on a surfboard and you can ride that motherfucker all the way to shore, right? And that can be the catalyst for your success. That's my reminder every day. And that's what I hear in this when you say, learn to follow the flow. So good on you, man. I love that. I just wanted to interject that little piece. So where can people find you, Kurt?
Yeah, on Instagram, check out Kurt the Arborist, K-U-R-T, the Arborist. I have links in my bio there to all of my other channels like Atmos Tree org and my Cochrane Tree Care, my local tree company, the Arborist Blueprint Podcast. Those are all separate Instagrams, and I release lots of clips on there. Otherwise, they can reach out to me, through atmostree.org. You can sign up for our newsletter there and get a bunch of kind of free, valuable content. I just stay in the know of what's going on with Atmos Tree, and you can connect through there if you're looking to, if you have some ideas of your own and you want to chat.
That's awesome. Well, Kurt, man, I can't thank you enough for spending your time with us today and sharing some of the wisdom and some of the things that you've learned over the last 3 years. I love our conversations, and I certainly don't think it's going to be the last one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, likewise, man. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Blue is the New White podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. For more, please follow at Josh Zolin on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Or visit us at blueisthenewwhite.com, where we create success, not debt, and build blue-collar heroes.